Daniel, we just returned from PAX West 2025 and we played a pretty good number of Switch 2 games. Obviously, Pokemon Legends EA and Kirby Air Riders were there, but they were the exact same demos that were at Gamescom. So if you want to know about those, check out John's coverage from Gamescom about 2 weeks ago at this point. Same stuff. But we got a surprising number of games that weren't at Gamescom and also our Switch 2 games specifically. We played some from Square Enix. We played some from much smaller indies. We even played Bubsy. So let's go ahead and go through every game we played in no particular order. If you want to skip around, there's timestamps down there. Just look for all the games. I'm not going to list them all off right now, but I want to start with what personally was my game of the show, Final Fantasy Tactics. You played this on Switch 2 as well, right?
Yeah, we had an appointment and you were on the console version and I was playing in handheld in the background. And yeah, we both were playing this around the same time, experiencing the same-ish areas at the same moments. And boy, I really am not tired of the art style that I'm seeing on display here. It looks gorgeous right now.
Yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics was a particularly interesting one for me. I played the demo at first on PS5, and then later on I stole some time with one of Square Enix's Switch 2s so that I could try it there as well just to see how it ran. And I have to say, it's pretty much perfect. Like, we didn't get to see docked mode for Switch 2, but we did see handheld mode.
Yeah, I was spending pretty much my whole time, a good amount of time playing it handheld because I was just so immediately like invested. I noticed from the home menu, I didn't realize this beforehand, but when I went to start up the game, I realized you can also start up the very original style of the game instead. If you don't want to do, if the new art style isn't for you, the voice acting isn't for you, you can also play the original version right there on the Switch too.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. It's basically the PlayStation original version with the War of Lions translation. So if you're familiar, they re-released the game with a better translation later on. But it's worth noting, I thought initially that this would be kind of like a toggle, kind of like Wonder Boy, that game that, was remade for the Switch a long time ago, like one of Lizard Cube's first games, where you could just switch back and forth, but it would still have some of the modern features. No, this is just straight up selecting between the two games. So if you want all the quality of life stuff, you have to play the upgraded version, but you still have basically a mostly untouched original just added as part of the package, which is super cool.
So this is your game of the show. So what did you think? Like, this is living up to your expectations for a remake of Final Fantasy Tactics?
This is, and I actually have like a whole page of notes I wrote down on this because I didn't want to forget anything. But first off, I have to say, I didn't realize like how nostalgic some of the sounds would make me. So Square Enix told me that they recreated some of the original sound effects, and I played most of the time in the upgraded presentation because I wanted to hear the voice acting. I listened to both English and Japanese voice acting. Both are stellar. They're really, really great castings, really great performances all around the board. Ramza sounds a lot older than I thought he would. I always pictured him as like a very young teenager just because of how they drew him. But the art style is a really interesting thing that they've done. It's like the sprites look upscaled, and weirdly enough, and I know this is going to sound derogatory in a weird way, they have that kind of Vaseline-y look to them, but it totally works. Like, I don't understand why it works, but it does. And the sound effects, particularly when you do an attack and the stage rotates, it has this kind of grinding sound to it that if you've ever played the PS1 original, you know exactly what I'm referring to. And I'm pleased to report it still tickles my brain the same way it did in the 90s. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I was so impressed with the presentation of this game all around. I'm not too familiar with the original Tactics, honestly. I haven't played it as much as you, most certainly. But just playing the game as it was, I was getting immediately like invested in the controls, in the way that everything's presented. Very nice. As you mentioned, sound quality is very excellent. This is really, there's a great time to get into this game if for anybody that's never actually gotten a chance to get into Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah, I have to say this was one of my favorite games of the PS1 era. I was nervous about the remake just because I didn't know what to expect, but it still feels very much like they just took the PS1 game and just made it better in pretty much every way without compromising what made the original so special. This is basically my Super Mario RPG moment, but for Final Fantasy. Like, this is probably the one Final Fantasy game I wanted rendered in its original style more than anything.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think everything I've seen about this game so far, I've just been a fan of, because I know everyone holds this in such high regard. I'm a tactical RPG fan, so this feels like a game I should have gotten into. I would definitely be giving the full game a try, a full complete playthrough once it comes out. And I'm curious to just try out the original version too. Just the fact that both of them are on here is such a cool little detail.
Yeah, it's really great. Can't wait to see. It comes out super soon, so I'm sure we'll have some impressions up on the channel whenever we get our hands on the game. The only thing I was a little bummed about, Square Enix told me that there were no Switch 2 specific features in this game. So no mouse control, no touch controls, nothing like that. Would have been cool to see them added, but again, that wasn't in the original, and this hew's really close to that. So I'm mostly okay with it. Just would have loved to see those little bells and whistles added on for Switch 2 players.
The mouse controls are so just ripe for more tactical RPGs to make use of it. I want to see it happen more. Unfortunately, not with this one, but I know when they start leaning into that, they're going to have something really, really fluid on their hands, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely, I agree. And that wasn't the only Final Fantasy we played. Square Enix invited us to play a whole ton of games. You've probably seen some impressions of other Square Enix titles from both Gamescom and PAX West here on the channel. But we did also get to sit down with a demo of Final Fantasy VII Remake. We played this actually in two different places. We played this both at Nintendo and at Square Enix. And this one was one of the only demos that was only on Switch 2 because obviously it's out on other platforms already. And I gotta say, I was utterly flabbergasted by how nice this looks and how well this runs on Switch 2.
Oh man, so I was setting up the recording behind you for getting the footage, and I was getting distracted by just looking at the screen because I was amazed that this was running on a Switch 2. Like it's a very stable 30 frames per second. The visuals, the lighting, it looks way beyond what I would have expected on the Switch 2. I couldn't believe it was on a Switch 2, honestly. And I played a lot of it on handheld as well. It looked just as good. It flowed just as nice, and I was just utterly impressed the entire time I had with it at PAX.
Yeah, it's really wild to me just how well optimized Square Enix has gotten this. Now, obviously, I've learned my lesson a little bit about frame rates and going from just looking at a TV, but I will say this. It's solid. Whatever it is, it's solid. I think it's 30 FPS, and I don't think I'm going to be wrong on that one. But it looked really good. The only thing that I really noticed, and saying it's PS4 quality is not meant as an insult, but Cloud's hair in particular was very obviously PS4 quality, but it felt like the rest of the presentation was PS5 quality. Like it's very clearly based on Intergrade instead of just the base version that launched on PS4 several years ago. There are visual upgrades apparent in the Switch 2 version over the PlayStation 4 version. So it was really cool to see this running, and it looked just as good in docked mode as it did in handheld. I literally couldn't believe what I was playing here. We played the first opening section where you're in the Mako reactor and you go to fight the Scorpion bot. Basically, what was in the publicly available demo of the PS4 version before it released, way back when we got that like PSN demo of the game. So just wild stuff here. I was super impressed with this. I'm surprised it's not coming out now because I found not a single issue in that game. I imagine that this is one of those games that Square Enix is just sitting on for the right release timing.
Yeah, that game just looked finished already from what I was seeing. The visual performance, the enhancements you see for Integrate, as you mentioned, were already very well present there. It's kind of like an in-between the PS4 and PS5 version. Like there are some aspects of that in here that you can see very well. And there's a lot of people that keep mentioning like, oh, the dithering in Cloud's hair is a little bit off, and so it looks kind of fuzzy, but that's like the only gripe that I can notice. Most of the time when you're playing the game, it's going to be in motion. You're going to be doing battles. You're going to be exploring the world. You're not really going to notice some things like that unless you're really focusing on it during cutscenes and whatnot. But for the majority of my demo, I was pretty much, as you mentioned, we were going through the Mako reactor, and I didn't notice that sort of thing. I was too immersed by the fact that this was running on a Switch 2 with great as performance as it had to really notice the flaws with it. And I think this is really going to show people what the Switch 2 is capable of when fully optimized.
Yeah, I've got no notes here. Square Enix has done a wonderful job. 10 out of 10. Can't wait to play this. They were a little bit dodgy with me on if they were going to release this physically. And I don't
Hmm.
know if that's, to be fair, as of recording this, maybe they have made some announcement. I fully suspect it'll be on a game key card just because every third party game seems to be. But man, I would love to have this physical on my shelf. It's just a day one purchase for me. I've seen enough. It feels uncompromised, and that's something that is becoming increasingly true of PS5 to Switch 2 ports. It just feels that level of close enough that, while I would love to play it in 60 FPS, they tuned this game just right. It looks crazy impressive.
Absolutely. For anybody out there who hasn't got a chance to play Final Fantasy VII Remake, you are not getting a compromised version. This is very competent, and you're going to be playing something that is fully serviceable to anyone that's been waiting to experience this on something other than the console they've released thus far. So, yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to just talk about huge games because obviously there are tons of huge games out there. Lots of AAA studios, lots of big, outlets out there that they're putting out stuff at a crazy clip. But we did get our chance to play with some smaller games, like some very small indie games. Fun fact, even Chillin' by the Fire was at PAX, but that's already released, so we didn't go and sit down and play that. But we did play a small game called Obakeidoro. I think it's 2. I think it's a sequel. But this
Yeah.
was a Switch 2 exclusive indie title that's being developed in Japan. It was very early on, like we played it on PC kits that they had out on the show floor, but they assured us that this game is only ever releasing on Switch 2. And they're kind of working their way along with it. It is a 4-player 3v1 or 1v3 ghost hide and seek game. Has some kind of Luigi's Mansion-esque vibes to it, but you basically, one player is a ghost and the other 3 are humans, and the ghost's job is to capture all the humans, and the human's job, of course, is to not get captured by the ghost. And this was a surprisingly fun little party game, though I don't know that it has enough content to really merit like a full release, unless what we saw was just a very narrow slice of the game.
Yeah, I thought it also has a very cute art style, very chibi style for all the characters. I think they're meant to have the ghosts kind of emulate different horror monsters or ghostly creatures from Japanese mythology, which is what I think that's what the demo had for the one that was playable.
Yes, we were
But
playing
yeah.
as Lady Hanako, which, if you're unaware, is like a toilet ghost. And she travels
Oh yeah.
around on a little toilet, and then she takes selfies when she captures people. She's like a schoolgirl who died in a bathroom, I think is how the legend goes. But yeah,
Mm.
it was cool. It was very interesting. Like, it's a unique concept, but we didn't really see much by way of like unique Switch 2 features or anything present in that build of the game. But again, it seemed really, really early.
Yeah, it has a lot of what were we comparing this to, like Dead by Daylight, that kind of style of game in which yeah, it's the 1v3. So who knows how many characters are going to add in this kind of game, or how much variety there's going to be. I thought it was a lovely little side game that we kind of saw at PAX. Definitely giving all. I definitely love what I'm seeing though. They're giving it their all. They're doing the devs were very kind when we were there. They gave us little fans once we were done. But yeah, I'm excited to see just little games like this. It's always the small games that you don't really expect to see that can surprise you at times. So it's always this is definitely one of those boosts where we were like, oh wow, yeah, I want to be able to keep up with this in the future as we see the future titles develop on Switch too.
Yeah, and one thing to say, I don't want to be too negative on this game. It does seem like a really fun, like couch co-op, well, couch party style game. Like, we spent a lot of time hanging out with other content creators during PAX, and this would have been a game I could have seen landing in that rotation alongside all the others that we would play after the show at night.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but you know what? One game that is decidedly not couch co-op. It's more of a single player-ish. Well, it's got its own co-op elements. Anyway, I won't meander more in the intro to this game. We played Plants vs Zombies. It's coming to literally everything, and it's very specifically coming to Switch 2. We didn't play the Switch 2 build. We played a Steam build, but we talked to the folks at PopCap while we were playing this, and this is just Plants vs Zombies, but in 4K.
I love how for this entire demo, I think it was your wife that was the most into it out of all of us. She was rocking that, and then you guys were doing the co-op together, and I was just kind of observing, seeing just how it's done. I hadn't really gotten too much into Plant vs Zombies when that first came out, so I was just watching the expert at work, basically.
Yeah, my wife is an absolute beast at Plants vs Zombies. She still plays it on her phone to this day, but I mean it is a very classic mobile game. It came out in a time where basically mobile games would occasionally have like a viral hit, and then just that would be the game everyone had on their phone. It's a bit more diverse these days in the mobile gaming landscape, but back then, Plants vs Zombies was like a bona fide hit. Um, and it's cool to see it on Switch too. And it's really cool to see what PopCap is planning to do. Again, we didn't get to play it, but we did talk to them a lot about what they have planned specifically for the Switch 2 version. They mentioned that there will be mouse mode controls. So if you've played this on PC, you can use your Joy-Con as a mouse. You have to toggle it off and on. I would have preferred if it just kind of knew, but you know what? I'll take what I can get here. This is the very classic Plants vs. Zombies experience, just much higher resolution. It looks the way you remember it looking. It plays the way you remember it playing. They've added some new modes and stuff that we didn't quite get to go fully hands-on with. But it comes out real soon. And I will say this, if you've ever liked the original Plants vs. Zombies, this is going to be a no-brainer. And it works co-op over game share, like with Switch 1. So you can do like local wireless
Right.
game share. They didn't allow internet game share, but I mean, I love that games are using more and more of the Switch 2's unique features. And I did have fun playing the demo. Like I forgot how much I liked Plants vs. Zombies. Just kind of laying sunflowers and watching pea shooters like take out all these zombies is a lot of fun. It's one of those games that I could see just kind of enjoying during my downtime. Although I will say I'll probably never play it docked. It'll probably be one of those handheld mode only type of games for me.
Yeah, that really helps to emulate the kind of like classic mobile game feel. And I do appreciate how much they're, paying attention to the art style, not changing it up too much at all, just up-resing it, making it look just as you remember it, as you were saying. Yeah, it's definitely there for the classic Plant vs. Zombies fans, or those that never got into it too much like I did.
Yeah.
And they had the new modes. There was like a new mode where, yeah, there was other modes in which it was a bit harder to plant your or manage your sun power. I don't even know the terms. This is how much I don't know the series,
it like
but
the sun economy or something. But
yeah,
like the weather would change, and then your plants wouldn't produce as much sun, which I thought was interesting. So there's some stuff in there for people who are like old heads who still play it. Like even my wife was pretty challenged in that mode, but ultimately she ended up destroying it. And I think the devs were a bit surprised at how little difficulty she encountered. But one thing to mention too is you can also use the touch screen, which is cool for those people who came up playing it on mobile. Switch 2 just seems to be the way to play this game because you have all of the input methods from every other platform on one machine. So I can't imagine buying this anywhere else.
yeah. If you switch to the PVZ machine, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Speaking of machines, we played a game, and the funniest bit about this, Daniel, is neither you nor I realized it was a Switch 2 game until we saw a photo of the physical for it. This was at the NIS America booth, and it is a Korean JRPG from Ikina Games called Starbites. And it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic Mad Maxy anime-inspired turn-based RPG. Honestly, on paper, it sounds really, really cool, but the demo we got was super limited.
Yeah, I looked at this. I know I passed by it a few times before we actually had, our appointment there, and I did not even register that it was NIS because it looks so different from everything else that's on their booth usually. And yeah, the mech aesthetic, the Mad Max, the style you were mentioning, it was like I was looking at something that didn't really seem like the typical style you've seen from NIS, but that also made it really cool to look at. You were on these different observing you on these mechs, turn-based combats. They have different did they change their style of attacks for weaknesses and whatnot? Like, you have to hit certain weaknesses to really to get into the combat itself, I think.
Yeah, so there were
I'm trying to remember what you went through.
It reminded me a little bit of like the weakness UI kind of reminded me of like a Shin Megami Tensei or something where you just had these little icons and you had to know what they meant for the weaknesses, but you could, and in a weird way, of a game we'll talk about later in this video, Octopath, because you could break enemies and then they wouldn't be able to attack for a bit. And you could also achieve what they call a runner's high. And if you activated your runner's high, you'd basically just get a second turn on top of your, pre-existing turn. So that you could, the goal was to break as many enemies as you can and then take as many actions as you can before they come back. And I will say that enemies, at least in the demo we played, were tuned to be pretty durable. Like battles took a while. But yeah, you play as this girl in a post-apocalyptic world, and you have to, you pilot a machine. I think they called them motor bots. And you're just kind of traveling this big empty wasteland, like scavenging for new parts, new materials, and you can modify your motor bot with all these different engines and stuff like that. We didn't get to see a whole lot of that in the demo, but we did talk to the creator who explained a bit about it for us, who, by the way, his laptop was covered in Nintendo stickers, which I found absolutely adorable. But it's an interesting game. I don't feel like I know enough about it to recommend it or not at this point. I'd really like to play some more though. It's piqued my interest at least. We played it on PS5. They didn't have a Switch 2 build available at the show, but all their marketing materials for the physical release only showed Switch 2. So it's definitely coming. No word on if it'll have what features it'll have or even a release date yet, but I would say just keep an eye on it. It's interesting enough.
Yeah, we definitely need to have some more insight on it before we can really judge it one way or another. It's so hard on the show floor when you have a JRPG or something like this. Like, they didn't really show so much of the story or those kind of mechanics. And I guess they can't really do so, and there's no real need to when you're just, demoing the gameplay itself. So on a loud show floor, just demoing the turn-based combat, I think I got a good feel for it. But yeah, in the future, we'll definitely keep an eye out to see if this is something to have on our radar soon.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting. You know what was probably, I know I talked about my game of the show, but I need to talk about my biggest surprise of the show. And that was Bubsy 4D. We both played this one, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but it was actually really good.
Is Bubsy back, Steve?
I think he's here, like, for the first time. I don't know that he was ever there to come back, but he's definitely here now. This is made by the Demon Tides developers and published by Atari. And I mean, it just kind of hits. Like, it is an expressive platformer is the phrase that they like to use. Bubsy is now a middle-aged man, which I can very much identify with. He's traded in his iconic t-shirt for a shirt and tie. He is very uninterested in going on an adventure. He doesn't want to help. He doesn't want to be part of things. He's just kind of forced into it. He's perpetually tired. I love this.
Just like us.
Yeah. He must make YouTube videos for a living. I love the characterization of Bubsy in this. And, like they said, the platforming is actually pretty solid. You've got like these, you've got a Mario Land style cat dive or a 3D world style cat dive. You've got the ability to climb on things with your claws. You've got this kind of weird, almost Tears of the Kingdom-ish move where Bubsy kind of spreads out like his arms and legs like Link does in midair, and he can kind of subtly float while he's doing that. And he's got Yoshi's freaking kind of extra height on his jump. It feels like they played a lot of Nintendo games to derive inspiration for Bubsy's movement.
I think one of the most unique ones was just, turning into a ball, inflating into a ball and rolling on like a half pipe down a pathway. I don't know how or why, if there's like a story reason why he does this, but he does it, and it looked kind of genuinely fun too.
Yeah, they call it furball mode, which doesn't make sense. But they call it furball mode, and then while you're holding Y, you can like mash the right trigger on your controller to gain speed, and it becomes almost monkey ball-esque because they put you in half pipes and stuff and have you do stuff like that. It was a very interesting setup, but we played 2 levels. We played one that was very obviously like a test level. They called it a tutorial level, but it really felt like a dev area. And then we played like a proper actual level where you have to collect yarn balls and you have to do all this other stuff. It's just it's wild to me that they managed to make a Bubsy game that felt I'm not going to go as far as to say it feels like it's on par with Mario, but it feels like a very competent 3D platformer.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was watching you play. We had just some criticisms on like the camera. The camera needs a little bit of work to adjust itself around Bubsy, but for the most part, we were really genuinely surprised at what we saw. I got a little bit of time with it as well. Once you, I think you had to head on to another interview or appointment after then, but I also got hands on with Bubsy, and yeah, I think this will surprise a lot of people, honestly. And yeah, this is something I never thought I would see. Bubsy 4D is a competent 3D platformer in the year 2025, and I'm honestly here for it.
Yeah, and as you uncovered during the demo, you can make them naked for some reason.
Yeah, they like showed me a little clip after you left how if you skip the specific like few frames of the cutscene in which he's changing from the iconic shirt to the open shirt and tie, there's the mosaic on Bubsy and without any clothes on, and if you do that, he'll just keep the mosaic on in the gameplay afterwards, and it is obscene, and I hope they keep it in.
Yeah, it's cool. I would say keep your eyes peeled for Bubsy. They told us we did get them to tell us specifically that there will be a Switch 2 edition for this game, so it's not going to be like Switch with backwards compatibility. They are doing a bespoke version of Bubsy 4D for the Switch 2, and as it stands right now, yeah, just keep your eyes on it because it's shaping up to be something worth talking about. So we'll see as it gets closer to release. They told us the game was feature complete and that they're working on optimization right now, but optimization is hard and can take a while. So we'll see where we end up.
Wow.
Following that,
can't wait. I guess I can't wait.
Right?
It's Bubsy in 4D, so
I know. I feel like I
this.
can wait, but I'm surprised. I'm surprised. I'm actually hyped for a Bubsy game. First time in my life.
Same here.
One of the biggest booths we saw at PAX West was for, ironically, one of the smaller games at the show. We had the opportunity to check out Starseeker Astroneer Expeditions, and I don't think either you or I have played the original Astroneer, right?
I have not. This was my first time actually seeing anything from Astroneer here.
Yeah, like I had remembered seeing Astroneer in a Nintendo Direct for the Switch 1, but I never picked it up, never played it. I remarked that it had really nice use of color, and the same is true here with Starseeker. But I was kind of surprised by what kind of game it is. It's essentially just kind of like a goofy take on No Man's Sky, really.
Yeah, I was wondering what this was. We all went there. Well, you and I went there together. It was like a co-op experience. And from what I saw, you're on this planet and you each have unique, you have your standard abilities to move around, to maneuver, jump, and whatnot. But you also have unique abilities. One of mine, I believe, I'm not sure if it was unique to me. It was being able to like carve out the land around us to make like, hills, to make areas that we can traverse and guide you through for certain parts. And then you had one, I believe, where you were oh no, I think we both had that. I was the one that was getting everything wet. I was getting
right. So you had a water blaster and I had a wind blaster.
That's
so
what it was.
I could blow enemies away from us, and you could there were lots of like slimy things that we couldn't touch, and you could wash the slime off of them. But we both had this kind of terrain destruction device, which was basically the elephant power up from DK Banana. Like we could suck up terrain. It was really cool. Like it felt like a very early demo, like an alpha, because it was. They told us that this game was in alpha. And again, like one of the things that you're going to hear a lot about games we played, particularly smaller ones, is that they're coming to Switch 2, but we played them on something else. This was just PC dev kits that we played on. But the bones of something very interesting were there. Like we were both kind of just these pudgy, tiny little astronauts with like a very tiny vertical leap. But what I really liked was kind of the creative game design. They said that they took some inspiration from Breath of the Wild and stuff like that. We had gliders that we could use. But there was a point where we encountered a pond and you started sucking up we both started like taking out the terrain around it, and you could see the water, even though it was made of like triangles, kind of flow into the holes that we made.
Yeah, that was fascinating. That was the part that stuck with me the most because, yeah, we were sucking on the side of it. We were trying to get it out of, trying to get or maneuver around it. But as we removed some of the terrain, yeah, it has a very polygonal style to it. It's very much that art style. It has like vaporwave coloring around the whole thing. It was very cool. But yeah, having those physics for the water work the way that they did was very eye-catching. And there's so many fun little ideas here. I can see how they can use this to play with, the terrain, with different missions in the future. There was just a lot of fun things we could do. I think you grabbed some of the native creatures and just threw them across the sky like a football. That was fun too.
Yeah, they were like these little guys that looked like carrots, and I decided to throw one, and I always shoot for the fences, and I threw one like into the air, and he just flew off into the horizon. Like I never saw him again. And one of the developers told us that that was initially a bug, but they thought it was so funny that they just kept it because they're like, it's really funny when you pick a little guy up and you just yeet him into the stratosphere. So, I mean, I gotta say, I was going into this demo, I wasn't at all excited. I was like, this is just another game to check out for coverage. Obviously, we want to try to cover as many things as we can from any show. But I ended up having a lot of fun. The way that they gave us a challenge and you and I had to work together with our unique abilities. You ended up boring a tunnel for me out of the inside of a mountain so that we could climb up to the top. And I thought that was just a really cool way to approach an objective, that we were able to like deform and destroy parts of the landscape to make our way to a goal. And then just kind of extract. Like it's almost like an extraction shooter. That's the other cool thing, is that you're given a time limit. So you can't just kind of go on and do whatever forever. You're given like 20 minutes of oxygen and you have to complete your objective and then leave within that 20 minutes. So it felt ideally suited to Switch because it feels like a very pick up and play kind of game.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, we didn't even play this 4-player. It was just 2 players. You can do 4-player co-op. I believe they all have different unique functions, like we did with your air pushing ability, and me shooting water like it's Mario Sunshine, my favorite game ever. But no, it was really fun to do it in this context, when we were fighting off monsters, when we were trying to complete our objectives. And yeah, I would love to play this with more of the guys on GVG once we see a bit more of it and see what else there is to offer. It's one of there's a lot of these 4-player kind of co-op games that we see right now. I think Peak is one of the most common ones that people are discussing at the moment. But this really feels like something that's more up my alley. So very excited to see more on this.
Yeah, I have a feeling this will end up on Good Vibes Arcade sometime in the future. Daniel, I know the answer to this question, but are you ready to get anime?
Oh yeah, I've been waiting this entire discussion to get anime.
I'm always anime, but let's talk about in kind of short order. I think the rest of the games on this list are all some degree of anime. Let's start with one of the ones that you may not have heard of too much, and that's X Nordics. This is an interesting one. So I'm going to tell you that if you want the best footage from this game, you should head over to our Patreon. By the time this goes live, I'll have it uploaded, because this is a 120 FPS Switch 2 game. And we played it on Switch 2 in 120 FPS, which is really cool. I played the original version of this game at PAX West 2024 on Switch 1, where it barely managed like 30-ish FPS. Like it didn't run super great, and at a lower resolution. So this version of X just looks and feels really good. Like we had a very short, like 10-minute demo where we had to fight a boss, but it was a good 10-minute demo.
It looked very smooth, very lovely. Yeah, this would be the definitive way to play X for anyone that hasn't done so already, or if you want to go back into it. I believe there's also some new characters included as well. There's a lot more here to experience than from the original. And yeah, I thought what I saw you were playing, that was very cool.
Yeah, it's basically just like, and I wish that this was a 2-player game, because I think you could have done something really interesting. So you play as 2 characters that are like chained together via some type of magic. They're bound together, and you can switch between them at any point with the Y button, I believe. And you can pull off combo moves and all kinds of cool stuff as these two characters. It just would have been neat if a second player could take over one of the characters and then you just play together. But, and maybe that's true. I will be fully transparent. I didn't play East 10 after the demo at PAX West. So maybe that's in there and I'm just totally unaware. Correct me in the comments if I am. But yeah, I just really, really enjoyed what I played here, and playing the Switch 2 version at that smooth 120 FPS with those updated graphics. I just really want to actually pick this up and play it now. Like it made the difference for me that the visual presentation and the high frame rate just kind of makes this game feel a lot more premium. And it feels like NIS America in particular is kind of angling a lot of their efforts towards Switch 2, because we have at least one more game we'll be talking about that we played at their booth that was very Switch 2 focused, but not a lot to say here. Interesting game. I think it comes out next year, so keep your eyes on it if you're interested in anime game for your Switch 2.
Yeah.
And here's where we kind of get a little less anime. Daniel, you're the expert on this one. This is one of the only games on this list that I didn't play, or at least I didn't play much of. But you and John already did a video on this. I'm talking about Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D. What did you think of this one?
Yeah, as you mentioned, John and I already have a discussion on there if you want to see the full topics that we had to cover. But in short, it's very good. If you play Dragon Quest 3, the remake of that, the HD2D remake for Dragon Quest 3, it pretty much just falls in line right with that. It is the NES style games of the originals, now fully realized with the beautiful HD2D graphics. They've added more features to these games, like for example, Dragon Quest 2 now has a fourth party member. The princess now joined. I forgot her name exactly because there was just so much going on during that demo. But there's now a fourth party member, which adds a whole bunch to it. Dragon Quest 1 is still that original experience that you remember. It is the one player. It is just you, man versus the world, basically. No party members or anything. But it still manages to stay in line and have that classic feel with all the updated visuals, the music. It's gorgeous. I am so excited to continue to play these because I haven't really played much of Dragon Quest 1 and 2. I played 3, but this is really unknown territory for me, and I think everyone that is curious about the origins, that loves Dragon Quest, will be able to pull a lot from this. So really great showing we had at the Square Enix appointment.
Yeah, I floundered in Dragon Quest 1 and 2. I played the demos. I just didn't do very good. I defeated Robin Hood in the first demo. And then in the Dragon Quest 2 demo, I just got my butt kicked. It was real hard, like NES hard, which makes sense. But yeah, check out John and Daniel's discussion if you want the full rundown on that demo. I will just say, as somebody who's not traditionally super into Dragon Quest, I liked it. I'll probably pick it up, and it was very cool. So from NIS to Square back to NIS, I did play another tactical RPG, which, if not for tactics, might have been my game of the show, and that's Disgaea 7 Complete on the Switch 2. Again, this was one that we got to play specifically on the Switch 2, and this game is the game that released last year. It's Disgaea 7, except it has all the DLC bundled. Here in North America, the only way to get the game with all the DLC sold together, according to NIS America, is by buying Disgaea 7 Complete on the Switch 2. They're only releasing it on Switch 2, and I have to say it's a monumental upgrade from the Switch 1 version. I bought Disgaea 7 on the Switch, and I didn't play it because I didn't like how it ran. Low resolution, poor frame rate, just wasn't a very good experience for that game, but Disgaea 7 Complete looks just like the PS5 version. Obviously, that's just to my eye. I've got some footage here on screen. You can choose for yourself if that's true. But I gotta say, I walked away from that just ready to open my wallet and pay for a second copy of this game so I could play it the way the developers intended. I obviously never got to experience the DLC or anything, but the only thing I'll say is I'm a little disappointed that there's not an upgrade path that I'm aware of. I don't think that NIS is doing any type of upgrade pack from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2 edition. I think they should have done that here, but other than that, this game looks phenomenal, performs very well.
Yeah, everything looks so smooth and nice. You always tell me how Disgaea is just a ridiculous series, and I got to see that from the demo that we saw there. the character turned massive and the entire field was the range of hit, and I was like, what is happening right now? Is this how Disgaea always is?
Disgaea always has some weird stuff like this. I don't recall jumbo. I think they called it jumbofication or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember that being in any of the other games, but so much crazy stuff happens in this series that it's entirely possible that it had happened. I just don't remember. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff like character attacks are always funny. There was one character in the demo party that was just like a shogun, and his attack was that people were carrying him and then they drop him on the enemy. Yeah, lots of wild stuff in this game. And usually it's true of every Disgaea game that they offer thousands of hours of gameplay. You roll the credits and then there's like an end game that could take an entire console generation to finish. So I'm just really impressed that they managed to again release a port that looks like a PS5 game running on the Switch 2. You just love to see this stuff.
It's awesome. Yeah.
All right. That's about it for Disgaea 7, but we're going to go from Square to NIS, or NIS to Square to whatever. We're going back to Square. This time to Square Zero, as it were, because we both played Octopath Zero. And again, we both played this one on Switch 2. Square Enix had a Switch 2 build of the game, and I will admit that my Octopath knowledge is severely lacking. So, Daniel, tell me what you thought of this one.
Oh man. So at first with the demo, they wanted to show us the whole like little town building area. And so we could spend as much time as we wanted to just kind of getting a feel for that. We were moving around, just putting down, I was just trying out putting down houses, putting down little decorations like barrels next to a house. Was just playing around for a good while, but I wanted to get to the actual gameplay itself. So they said, whenever you're ready, go ahead and quick warp to this one area and take on a request and head to a cave. So I did that. Had a full party of 8 people just walking behind me, and I was like, "Whoa, dude!" I was excessive because I guess I was a little bit overwhelmed because as I entered my first battle. They were all just there. All 8 of them were lined up behind me. Everybody pairs off with somebody else. And so when you're in battle, the person in front is doing the commands. So it's the usual, if you play Octopath Traveler 1 and 2, you kind of know what to expect at this point. You can store your attacks. You can use them all at once, much like the Bravely Default system. But the person in back in your other line is also charging up their attacks as well, and I think they slowly recover HP and other things when they're in reserve. So you have to strategically now manage 8 different characters on the field, and I thought that was going to be a bit overwhelming. I didn't even realize I could just had the option to switch them at will until like a couple battles later. But that adds such a different layer of strategy to this one. I haven't really experienced that kind of thing before with a JRPG. I think the first game kind of played with this idea. Towards the very end, you would utilize all 8 party members, but that wasn't something that they did it in this style, I believe. So yeah, it's really unique. I'm still curious about Octopath Zero because in my party we had a bunch of characters I had never seen before, but I also had Tressa from Octopath 1, and I'm just like, how I know this is based on another Octopath game. I think it was it more mobile style Octopath? Because yeah, there's bits and pieces here I still need to acclimate myself to, but it's really funny to be able to just see characters I already knew, just hear back again using the same skills and abilities that I remember. But overall, I think it left a really great impression. Looks as beautiful as you would have expected from an HD 2D title, and sounds great. The quality is just there. And I don't know. I really just kind of I need to catch up with Octopath Traveler and play Octopath Zero because what I saw there was really fun.
Yeah, I was particularly impressed by the demo. Like I basically jumped right out of the town building stuff. I was like, this is neat, but I want to see what the actual gameplay is like. There are layers on layers of strategy to the combat system that I just was not fully grasping when I was playing, because show floor is not, or even a private room is not really the best place to like learn a whole system, because they dropped us into like a mid-game encounter where you're expected to know a little bit about the combat system already. But I gotta say, it was one of those where when it does click, it's extremely satisfying. You had the whole, break system. I was able to go multiple turns without enemies being able to do anything, but at the end of the day, I got cooked by the boss of that demo. He absolutely wrecked me. But I had a lot of fun doing it. And like you said, I'm really excited to see how this game turns out when it comes out. I feel like I should probably play 1 and 2 before I play 0. And that's where I'm hung up. But I don't know. In the comments, if you guys have played all 3, because obviously 0 was a mobile title, do you need to play 1 and 2? I don't know, but I would probably still try to do that because, like you said, Daniel, there's something real cool about seeing familiar characters in a new context.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of familiar characters in a new context, Daniel, I know you're very excited for Trails first chapter, but you also got to play the latest game in the Trails series, The Legend of Heroes Trails Beyond the Horizon. Again at the NIS booth. I feel like we just stacked the back of this video going between 2 booths. I was fully lost. I watched you play this and I was like, this looks really cool, but this is a series that has spanned decades at this point, and this was one of my first touch points with it. What did you think of the demo you played? I know you're relatively new to the series as well.
Oh man, it felt like a sin to be playing this after just doing the demo for Trails in the Sky. Specifically because apparently, so I'm sure the fans of the series probably already know this, but this Trails game in particular, the one that we played in demoed, is more so like a title in which the characters and protagonists of other games come together. Like there's different arcs to the story. Like there's Cold Steel, there's Daybreak, there's Trails in the Sky. They all have their own stories, but they all are connected within one world, and they all are meant to connect to each other with characters and references and whatnots. But playing this one, it's meant to be, and I kind of joked about it with the one that was demoing for us there too, but she agreed, and she had other people explain it this way too. It's like the Avengers of the Trails of the Sky series. So for most of the demo, I was just moving around with the main characters. I was getting used to the combat. It was thankfully familiar to me enough that I can kind of ease into it from what I was playing with the Trails of the Sky demo. So you can see, it was interesting to see in real time how what the series has evolved into now is being adapted to the first game with the remake of Trails in the Sky. But then it was the part where once I had completed, the one main mission that was in there, it transitioned to a different cutscene. And in this cutscene was the introduction to 3 characters. It was Altina, Irene, and Kevin. And for you and I, that probably doesn't mean a lot. But for people who are fans of the series, these are characters that appeared from throughout the Trails of the Sky, the Trails series in general. And so I was missing a lot of context. So I feel like I shouldn't touch this game for a good long while. They made one mention of Estelle in passing, and that's the only reference that I got throughout the entire demo. But I love how it plays. Like it just felt like I was playing the Trails in the Sky demo again. And so, this is really exciting for those in that fan base. I probably won't see this for a good long while if I really do want to get into the series. I had no context, but from what I played, yeah, it has that sauce. It has that good that sauce in it, man. I want to play it again so bad.
Yeah, it's one of those where there's such a history behind it that I'm just not sure what to do. It's very exciting to see that this series is having this kind of moment, but at the same time I'm with you. Like I feel like I need to play the other 10, 11 games before I go to this one, but I did see a very competent RPG while you were playing. So if you're into the series and you've been following it, this is probably one of the hypest moments of the year for you. If you're like us and you're just starting out or you're just familiarizing yourself, you probably have a lot of reading to do. But there was one final game. Tell me quickly in your own words, Pac-Man. What did you think?
Pac is back. Everyone loves Pac-Man World 2 the most of the entire trilogy. I myself included. I played it on GameCube a long time ago. I got to spend a whole 2 hours in line to play this demo, so I really wanted to make sure that I was able to make something of it. So I'll be doing a comparison and impressions video together real soon. It might be out by the time this video is. It might not be. Just keep an eye out for the Pac-Man. And it was a good time. I love the improvements that I see on there. It's vastly, well, obviously it looks a lot nicer in a higher resolution. And Pac-Man has a voice. It's the same voice from Pac-Man World 3. They have him back. So I love the continuity of that. They're committing to the bits. But yeah, great. Looks great so far.
That's cool. Yeah, I can't wait to see and hear more about your Pac-Man impressions. I want to play the game myself. Like, I did not understand the hype when I saw it, but then I saw the game and I was like, this looks really, really good actually. But yeah, and there's a lot of Switch 2 games coming out to be excited over. Some of these are coming in just a few weeks, some a few months, some next year. I was surprised when we got to PAX West 2025 to see that many games on the show floor that were Switch 2 bound. Just kind of shows that developers are getting used to having their hands on the console and are preparing stuff to release. But yeah, that's going to do it for us. Thank you guys so much for watching our lengthy impressions on everything we played at PAX West 2025. We're going to have a separate video on things that we're excited for next year, that some we played, some maybe we didn't play at PAX West, but so stay tuned for that as well. Make sure to subscribe to be the first to know every time we upload a new video, and we'll see you guys next time. Until then, bye.
Till we meet again.